Namaste. I am Nipa Rai Chaudhary and I will be your host for today. I welcome you all to this webinar hosted by Tata Studi, #Padhne Ka Sahi Tarika. Today is UNESCO International Day of Education. The theme for this year is Changing Course, Transforming Education. Through this theme, UNESCO aims to showcase the most important transformations that have to be nurtured to realize everyone's fundamental right to education and build a more sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful futures. We all know that school closures during the different waves of pandemic have impacted teaching and learning everywhere. In these tough times, school leaders and management around the world came up with many innovative solutions to maintain the learning continuum. The two popular teaching learning models to emerge are blended learning and hybrid learning. In blended learning, teachers combine in-person instruction with online activities. Learners complete both components online and some in class. In hybrid learning, on the other hand, some students of the class learn in the physical class and others participate online at the same time. Teachers teach remote and in-person learners simultaneously using technology like video conferencing. In hybrid learning, the in-person and online learners are different individuals. With blended learning, the same individuals learn both in person and online. As we all know, ladies and gentlemen, with some parents giving consent for in-class teaching and others not, educators have explored various hybrid learning models. However, hybrid learning also requires learners to be in charge of their learning, because in this model, the in-class interaction time is reduced. So the need of the hour is to help our children develop the skill of learning how to learn, a skill emphasized by NEP 2020. And therefore, we have chosen our topic of discussion today as hybrid learning, putting learners in charge of their learning. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed panel of speakers on screen. Let me put my hands together and welcome Ms. Fatema Agarkar, founder and CEO of Agarkar Center of Excellence. May I also invite Dr. Nicholas Correa, Executive Director of New Horizons Group of Schools. Please help me welcome Dr. Jayashree Kanwar, Director of Sagar Public School.
Hello.
May I also invite Mrs. Deepti Ingle, Principal, KLE International School.
Thank you so much.
Mrs. Susmita Mohanty is also joining us today, Director Principal, Sanjay, Ghodwat International School. And finally, may I invite Mr. Anil, Mammen, Chief Learning Design and Social Impact at Tata Class Edge. I extend a very hearty welcome to all of our panelists and thank you so much for giving us your precious time today and joining us. I am sure we will learn a lot about learning from your experiences. I would now like to invite Mr. Anil Mammen to speak a few words on our topic for discussion today, that is hybrid learning, putting learners in charge of their learning.
Thank you, Nipa, for setting the context for today's session so well. In fact, the last 2 years have been extremely challenging for both teachers and students, and I would say even parents. In fact, most parents would have witnessed at close quarters the challenges and difficulties that teachers had to put up with trying to keep students motivated, engaged, and doing the best they can to help them learn. In fact, the best of teachers have always put learners at the center of things. Today we're talking about hybrid learning and students taking charge of their own learning. So that's what the best of teachers have always done. And no wonder today many of them have come a long way from the early days of lockdown, when they were struggling with technology, and look at them today, they've adapted using the online medium in very creative ways. They effectively use online polling, they integrate quizzes and games, and they even handle classroom discussions very efficiently in the online medium. I'm talking of the best of teachers. So the thing to understand is teaching, simply put, is about helping others learn, in our case, the students. So, and there are three critical aspects to it. Of course, there are, teaching has many different dimensions, but let me just talk about three critical aspects. On the one hand, teaching is about the subject in question. So physics, chemistry, social sciences, whatever that you're teaching. The what is the what of learning, right? And in our field, we call it what we call the curriculum. So that's what education is referred to it. On the other, it's about how to teach, given the subject and what the students need to grasp. And this is what we call pedagogy. So how do I make my class engaging and meaningful to my students? And that's not easy at all. Finally, it's about guiding students on how to learn. In other words, learning how to learn. And this is an aspect that our new national education policy talks about it too. I mean, learning how to learn. I mean, there's a technical term for it. It's called metacognition. Ultimately, it's about making students independent learners. I'll come back to the last bit a little later in the session. The what and how of teaching is something that happens in the classroom, right? Be it online or offline. So it doesn't matter if it's a physical classroom or if it's a blended model with the topic in question today. The fact is, even if you're using an effective blend of both mediums, what is a classroom, whether it's offline or online, what does a classroom have that learning on one's own doesn't have? Of course, it's other students. It's other students and the presence of a teacher, right? So fundamentally, a school is a social environment. That's the most important thing that we have to grasp. And a classroom is not a place just to transfer information. It's about getting students to interact, ask questions, express their understanding. At the end of it all, it's about meaningful activities and meaningful conversations. In fact, that's where I would think the whole online learning experience didn't really work in the initial days of lockdown. If you use the online medium only as a means to teach content, students are likely to be mentally locked out. That's where the hybrid model works better. Let's take a simple example. Teachers could ask students to watch a short video and say the structure of an eye before the class begins. So it could be an assignment for the day before I'm supposed to teach that in the classroom. Now that you come to the classroom and then discuss the details in the classroom. So what I'm saying is the more students get to express themselves, you make your classes more engaging and memorable. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we at Tata Classes follow this learning framework called the multiple learning experiences model, where you conceive the classroom as a collection of varied experiences. It could be discussions, debates, creative activities like making stories or artwork, all of this around reinforcing the main teaching points of the topic that you're teaching. It's about getting students to apply what they learn in reasonably realistic contexts, or getting them to express their understanding in ways they are comfortable with, not just always in the written form or in the spoken form, right? So I'm sure the distinguished panelists will have more interesting things to share on some of these aspects. And so over to you, Nipa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mammen, for setting the tone of the discussion today. And now let us start with the panel discussion. My first question goes to Ms. Fatema Agarkar. Ma'am, what do you think, what are the measures that students and parents can take to inculcate good learning habits in students?
Thanks, Nipa. I have to say, if I have to follow what Anil has said, he said everything. He set the tone beautifully. But yeah, there are certain things that I think are going to be important from all stakeholders' point of view. And I think the pandemic has taught us that. From a student perspective, you're going to have to put a lot of onus on them taking responsibility, which means parents take a back seat, teachers take a back seat. That micromanaging, waking them up, getting them, into the shower, getting them into online school, all that needs to stop, because we've seen too much of it. We've been auditors of schools. You're going to have to set essential agreements for children. You're going to have rituals. You're going to have processes that allow them to be independent, what Anil spoke about. Eventually, success is going to be driven on what you are going to achieve. And I think now, with the pandemic and what we've gone through, let's put that price on the child taking responsibility. Stop this parallel tuition teacher, mother, father doing that. Let's get the child accountable for their own exams. I'm so tired of listening to parents, and we do counseling as well. Everyone's taking a backseat because now board exams, 10th standard. Why would you give up your life because your child has to take an exam? If this is the state of Indian education, we're in a sorry state. Also, I'm going to take up 2 points from what Anil said. In the 1800s, Stanford professor actually talked about technology. It's 2022. We're still debating it. So my problem is, guys, you have to understand it's going to be a part of our world. Technology helps. Today, my children in Ratnagiri, a small town, can access a Smithsonian museum thanks to technology. So please understand, those virtual trips that we think about. Field trips are part of our curriculum because we want children to experience, but some of it is going to be virtual because you can't take all your kids there. So, for me, students taking accountability process, system. I'm a sportsman's wife. I'm just going to be very honest. It's what you put in before you can deliver. So sleeping enough, eating enough, not overfeeding your children. Kids need to understand that they can't eat every hour. And this is a pandemic problem. I have my cousin who's also a bariatric surgeon who tells me 1 in 3 kids today will be obese because of the overfeeding that's happening. When they were in brick and mortar, they were, at least there was prolonged period. So for me, fitness, sleeping, Indian children, and I'm part of the research that says Indians children don't sleep enough. On an average, pre-primary children need to sleep 10 hours. Preparatory NEP tells you they need to sleep between 8 to 10 hours. Our children sleep 6 hours. So there's a problem with the input and then the output. So these are some of the things that I think parents need to be conscious of. But Nipa, problem is, everyone's working from home. It's tough, dual, responsibility, but you can still manage.
Do you think the coddling has increased now that children are at home?
Yeah, and also the interference, right? You're judging the teacher who's delivering content. Now, I'm just going to be very honest. I have a consultancy school. Now the father is a physics professor. He's saying, Fatema, now she taught this concept differently. I said, allow the teacher to connect with the child. Don't interfere. So parents need to now detach, be responsible for, again, input. Get the kids on time, let them make their own bed, let them shower before an online class. And Anil, I'm just going to say, this is life. In 3 months, we might be in lockdown. New Zealand is in lockdown at the moment, and they were without masks. So, everything Anil said, I endorse, but we're taking it too lightly. I think Susmita ma'am was there in the dry run when she pointed out, why is school virtual or physical? Why are we comparing? I'm a big fan of Dr. Kalam, and one thing I've always remembered when I met him, he said school is about boundaries in an Indian mindset, but it shouldn't be. It should be about learning, and I think that's what Anil mentioned. It could be anything. Students need to have a ritual, have a schedule. Sorry, parents, if you think this is easy, it isn't. And also teachers need to call out. They need to communicate. So for me, I think the onus is on now letting the kids be. They've wizened up anyway after these 2 years.
Absolutely. And I think there is a need for parents and students to understand that virtual learning should be treated exactly as physical learning is. It is as serious as it gets, even if you're sitting at home and learning on your computer. It's the same thing. It's not any different than when you're going to school and learning. So,
yeah, Fatema, I would like to add here a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
Somehow we have experienced that our Indian kids, they're not responsible. So the attribute of the education to make the children responsible, that's not happening, because I would tell you one of my experience that one day the online classes is going on and then there was a mother, because the parents are there. I just want to share that mother was busy combing the hair of the child and the class is about to start. Then I said that the child is grown up and then he can manage and he can do all his own things before the class would start. What you said, Fatema, it is the extension of the same. So somehow we need to see to it that our children become more independent and they become responsible.
But Susmita ma'am, one thing I have to say, it's Indian parents. We have this need to hold them back because we feel, they're connected to us. So Nipa, sorry, we've taken over your conversation.
Not a problem, ma'am. These insights are extremely
Fatema,
important.
you were talking about lockdown in New Zealand and it may happen anytime in India. I would just like to assure you that lockdown could not lock education in any way.
Absolutely.
I think
that's been happening throughout and it's going to happen.
That deserves
That's very well said,
ma'am. Absolutely, ma'am. Well, thank you for sharing your insights on this question. Apart from good learning habits, the children must also be interested and engaged in the learning process for better retention. So now my question goes out to Dr. Nicholas Correa. In light of these challenges, what is your take on the competency-based learning introduced by NEP and CBSE?
Thank you, Nipa, and thank you, Tata Study. The very purpose of education or imparting education is developing cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains of children. And that's where competency-based education comes in place. The concept of competency-based learning became popular with the implementation of NCF 2005. RTE 2009 made CC mandatory in primary classes, and competency-based learning or education is integral part of CCE. However, CCE lost its relevance as many schools across the country could not digest it as CCE shifted from mark system to grading. Wherever it was implemented meaningfully, many parents felt that the schools were conducting more activities than studies. With the introduction of National Education Policy 2020, the competency-based learning has resurrected again. The National Education Policy 2020 recommends transforming the assessment system to promote development of students and suggests a shift from testing rote memorization to competency-based learning. Competency-based learning is an outcome-based approach to ensure proficiency in learning through demonstration of knowledge, skills, values, attitudes required for dealing with real-life situations. Using games, field trips, role play, and many other hands-on activities, as Fatema madam rightly said, as pedagogical tools, provides opportunities for deeper conceptual understanding and also develops skills such as teamwork, communication, critical thinking, emotional maturity, grit, decision-making, interpersonal skills, empathy, etc. It makes learning fun and meaningful. CBSE has created various manuals for promoting competency-based education in its affiliated schools. Some of these manuals are like Joyful Learning, 21st Century Skills, Teacher Energized Resource Manual for Mathematics and Science, Art Integration, Experiential Learning, School Quality Assessment and Assurance, etc. CBSE has created 4 special modules on competency-based education, each module consisting of 4 hours of dynamic training for teachers. Those modules are also available on Diksha platform, which every teacher can view freely. NCERT has also developed learning outcomes in all the curriculum areas class-wise, linking with the curricular expectations and pedagogical processes, which is followed in CBSE schools. Competency-based teaching works to empower students. It places the learner at the center and actively engages them in the learning process. CBE, that is competency-based learning, integrates higher order thinking skills, interdisciplinary approaches, problem solving, etc. The approach enables the learner to be competent not only in the national context, but also the international context. Schools across the country have been using CBE in one way or the other. However, it has remained just as the icing on the cake. Competency-based learning is multifaceted and time-consuming. It cannot be implemented effectively and meaningfully with the current load of syllabus, as educators are busy completing their syllabus. However, NEP 2020 has recommended reduction and rationalization of syllabus. We are looking forward for the new NCF, followed by the design of curriculum and the textbooks by NCERT, which will be the fodder for national curriculum and also gateway for the creative implementation of CBE. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Correa. Competency-based teaching and learning is definitely shifting the focus from rote learning to conceptual understanding. I wanted to ask you, do you think conceptual understanding, the conceptual competency-based teaching and learning is changing the conversation from the importance given on marks, particularly? A student in times before, the interest was always on how much a student scored. Do you think the conversation is changing now and it's how much the student is learning?
Very true. Very true.
It's very true. Now, if you see now,
it's shifting from marks to understanding.
And it's also now shifting to first the child getting the mastery over the concept.
Yeah.
Rather than it's not so much time based as much as it is how much the child has actually assimilated.
Absolutely.
Now, recent changes introduced by CBSE in the examination pattern, they have introduced MCQs. Again, it's a competency-based learning. Child has to understand the concept. Without digesting the concept, definitely child will not be able to understand.
So Nipa, our study has also showed that the recent test, the baseline test that we do for our children, because we won them grade 3, random selection, kids struggled. Anil, I think you can jump in this conversation. Critical thinking is a lovely concept. How do you implement it? Yeah, because we're so used to saying apple is red. It cannot be green, it can't be yellow, it can't be black, it can't be blue. Imagine CBSE accepting blue, because it's my imaginary apple.
Very true.
So, you know, I think we're there. In terms of understanding. I don't know how many schools will go back pre-pandemic. I hope they don't.
Absolutely. You know, just speaking about myself, when I was in school, I used to struggle with math as a subject a lot. The most important thing,
Me too.
the most important thing for me was I need to pass. I need to focus on my marks. But now that I see children today, they focus more on understanding the subjects. And that is, I think, such a, you know, every cloud has a silver lining. So the pandemic has brought a change, a beautiful change, where I see students more acceptable and more understanding on what they are learning. So I think that that's pretty great. My next question goes to Mrs. Deepti Ingle. Ma'am, what have been some of the critical challenges students face since teaching moved online?
Nipa, never before in the history of humanity has there been such a social vacuum for children. Ever since classes have moved to the virtual mode, suddenly the entire social dynamics has just gone up into the air. There is no peer interaction. The whole interpersonal dynamics in a classroom is just zilch now. So that is by itself very, very distracting for children. This has led to feelings of isolation, definitely, monotony, because there is nothing new happening. You know, all the time through the day, the child is just staring at the screen. And how much can they listen? The teachers may try and do their best, but finally they are children, and how much attention span can children have, really? It's also led to lack of motivation. Definitely led to a lot of lack of motivation. In fact, we ourselves conducted some sample studies in our school last session. And the trend we saw was that with the onset of pandemic, we saw that children started coping better at linguistics. However, with math and physics or abstract concepts, we saw a dip in the assessment. So that was something that we noticed. Apart from that, now I'm happy to represent a group of schools which are spread all over Karnataka and Maharashtra as well, and of course other places. And I could really share with all of you the reality, what children face. There are so many schools which are located in the rural area. We are talking about children who are from elite homes. They have laptops. In some of our schools, there are children, there may be 4 siblings, but there is only one mobile device. And can you imagine how are the 4 children supposed to attend the class on one mobile device? And how much can you figure out on a mobile? The whole day, they cannot see their classmates. They can only see the teacher or the board that the teacher is sharing. So definitely it is very challenging. And to keep on expecting that children will do well, or they should be able to cope on their own. It sounds good, but on practical ground, we've seen the difficulties which children face. Children get left behind. It's not easy for every child to, own up and say, okay, ma'am, I can't understand in a class of 40 maybe. And because they have their own self-esteem issues as well. They are not going to tell you they haven't understood. So they do get left behind. And with the best efforts that the teacher might put in, she will not be able to monitor what each child is doing in her online class. Now, apart from that, there are so many distractions. There are so many distractions when nobody is watching you physically. And finally, they are children, right? How much do you expect out of them? And in the pandemic, what we have observed is parents are always very worried. Their biorhythms are completely disturbed. They don't sleep at night. They wake up late. They are absolutely out of time, out of pace with everything. There are children who will wake up right before the class, or probably they just log into the class and they sleep off back. And somehow during this time also, what we have also observed because we are a big group of schools, so our sample sizes are also quite big. Definitely we see that there are mental health problems which are beginning to erupt now in children. And we see signs of depression. There are a lot of cases where children are trying to harm themselves. There is rise in aggression in children. And rise in aggression because they are at a loss. They are not able to meet their friends. All the classes they went for, all their hobby classes, everything is just online, and it's the same format which their classes also use. So it's very difficult for them to cope. Eating habits have changed. Children are not able to, they've become very unhealthy in their eating habits. A lot of junk they eat. Everyone seems to be putting on weight. There is so much pressure on them from schools, from their parents, that they need to study. But then how practical is it for maybe a 13, 14-year-old to sit alone the whole day and stare at the screen? So these are my little thoughts on the problems that children are facing.
Absolutely. I think isolation is something that everyone struggles with, be it an adult or a child. And even though we want it to be a perfect virtual world, it's not yet. We still have a long way to go to reach that. So thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights with us. You know, there are indeed significant challenges being faced by school students. So my next question goes to Dr. Jayashree Kanwar. Ma'am, how can teachers engage students better in an online or hybrid teaching mode? If you remember the other day when I was talking, I was telling you about my neighbor. In fact, just today, we share a window. So I can practically hear her from every morning from 10 to 12, scream on top of her voice. She's telling all the students to sit properly, to not eat, to not sleep. How is it that teachers can be engaging in this time?
Wonderful discussion on a future of education on the International Day of Education. All of us need to understand and realize that online education or hybrid learning is here to stay. And we need to understand all the challenges that the children
are
facing.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes,
can we applaud that? Because this has been, something that we should actually celebrate.
Yes.
Thank you. So,
thank you. Thank you.
Eloquently mentioning it.
Thank you so much. So the most important thing comes here is how to engage the children in the online classes. But if I would remind all of you, even engaging the children in offline classes was equally challenging. That's right. Now it has become more challenging because of the social, the emotional, the psychological, and the academic challenges the children have started facing due to pandemic. But virtual or offline, we need to engage the children all the time in the classroom. I think the first thing that the teachers need to do is to build rapport with them. Now, when you build a rapport with the children, you put on your video is on, you know their names, you enter the class with a smile, you sort of have a very pleasant tone, and on top of that, you are very enthusiastic to conduct the class. All of us know that enthusiasm is contagious. So if the teacher is enthusiastic, the students are going to be enthusiastic. That is the first thing that needs to be taken care of. The second is to engage the children, you need to plan very well, right? If you are supposed to show a video, if you want to conduct an activity, if you want to show some Tata class edge content, or you have to share some links, you must ensure that everything is ready with you. And then you conduct a class in an impeccable way. Children will also know that teacher means business. She's ready, and we'd rather pay attention to what she's about to tell us. Now, on top of that, we have so many online tools and devices these days, right? All of you must be using them also. So those tools, whether it is a mind map, or it is a Mentimeter, or it is a Padlet, or spin the wheel, and you know, so many of them, Prezi and World War, Wall and Quizzes. If you will use these devices, these online tools in your classrooms, children will definitely get interested in all of them. And they are going to pay attention in class, and they will be totally engaged in your classroom. Also, you don't forget to use elements of games. All of us know how children love gaming online. So if we have, you know, certain puzzles for them, or, you know, if we create some kind of competitions for them on during the class, if we take them for a virtual trip, field trip, what fun it is going to be for children. And of course, for this, teachers need to be action oriented and very, very creative. That is for sure. Then we should organize discussions. We should have some discussions on current affairs. You know, there are so many topics. If you'll talk about social science, and if you'll talk about science, even for that matter, English, hundreds of topics are there which are, you know, which can be discussed in the classroom. Discuss them, give them assignments in which, you know, they have to do some kind of analysis, or they have to, you know, do some kind of reasoning. They have to collect data. This will keep them busy at home, and it will also develop a healthy self-study habit at home. Never forget that the students need to be appreciated all the time. They need to be encouraged. They need to be appreciated. Another wonderful thing which is tried and tested, I mean, we practically do it in our school, is flipped classroom. See, when you shift the onus of conducting a class on a student, you know, he feels that, you know, he can showcase his potential. This is the time when I can showcase my potential. This part of syllabus, teacher has asked me to conduct. I'm going to be the teacher. So he's going to explore the details. He's going to the internet, he'll be going to the Google, and he'll collect all the information related to that particular topic. And he will come and present it in the class. Imagine the confidence building of that child when he comes and conducts the class as a teacher. And all the other students also, the peer group also is going to contribute. They are also going to give their inputs. And finally, of course, the teacher does the job. So these are a few very different you know, activities which can be used to engage the children. Always try to make children active participants and not passive listeners. Now for this, you can do a wonderful activity. When you give them, you know, give them a statement, give them a paragraph, give them a formula, give them a definition, and ensure that there are errors in it. And now tell them that you have to find the errors. Now, when the students have to find the errors, they are 100% going to be there in your class with all, you know, attention. Because children love finding errors. So they are going to find errors, and they are going to say, ma'am, this is wrong, ma'am, that is wrong. Your engaging children problem is solved. Another wonderful thing is that you need to stop the children from drifting away. Now, how do you do it? Ask them questions. Take names and ask questions randomly. All of them will be attentive. Maybe teacher asks us, and pose a variety of questions to them by name. And then, you know, once you get a correct answer, appreciate them, motivate them. Then ask some of their peer group that, okay, now this is the correct answer. Tell us, how can you relate this to life? How can you apply this concept in life? And that is going to be learning for life. So this is also going to break the monotony of the class, right? we always make it a point that we leave the classroom with a challenging question for the children. Always leave a challenging, open-ended question for the children. And I can promise you, they will come with so much energy and enthusiasm in your next class. Why? Because they have done their homework, the thought process had begun, they have got the right answer, and they definitely want to share it with their peer. And all of them are going to do, because it's going to be one-upmanship on the others, right? So that is how you will be engaging your children in a very, very fruitful way. Also, show that you care. Show that you have a genuine concern for the students. And how can you do that? You are having your regular classes throughout the day. For the gifted children, those who are high achievers, tell them that we are going to have an enrichment class in the afternoon or in the evening once a week after school hours. Pose some HOTS to them, some high order thinking skill questions to them. Discuss things. These children would become, your followers for a lifetime. At the same time, if you have some low achievers in your class, some children who are slow, tell them that after school hours, we'll meet for half an hour once a week for remediation. You need help. Probably, bring your queries, bring your problems, the concepts which you have not understood too well. Bring them to class, and we are going to discuss, and I will ensure that you know everything. Now that child will be eternally grateful to you. So my dear friends, it is very, very important that all these things are done in class with students. Now, one more thing we can do is we can call up the parents and appreciate the students. It is very important. All the time when the phone rings for the parents, they presume that there is some complaint, the teacher is going to reprimand the child, and she's going to tell me he's not attending or this and that. But once in a while, call up the parent to appreciate the child. Tell them, it's wonderful. Your child attends class regularly. He interacts in the class. He participates in the class. He's submitting all his work on time. And when the parents are going to share this with the child, that your teacher called up to appreciate you, she was congratulating you, the kind of the heavenly feeling, he will be super happy. And when he comes to the class next time, there would be no reason why the teacher has to worry about whether he's engaged in the classroom or not. So, building an emotional bonding with the children, developing a faith in the teacher is what we need to do. And of course, teachers have been the frontline warriors. They have done a
huge round of applause for that statement.
They have done a wonderful job. I salute them. And I actually feel that maybe, this virtual classes and this online classes were actually imposed upon us. But now all the teachers are doing a wonderful job of it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanwar, for sharing your valuable strategies for student engagement. This just reminds me of when I was in school and how I used to, relate to different teachers. If there was someone who just droned on, I was a backbencher and I would sit and scribble behind. But if there was someone who would ask random people questions, random students, I would, sit with complete attention so that I know my answer if at all I am called. So these are truly ways that even now, even if we have shifted to the virtual medium, a teacher can connect with the student and keep them engaged. So thank you so much.
Please don't say even if we have. This is our reality.
Absolutely. This is our reality.
This is our reality, and please don't take away from it. Because I think there's been amazing amount of information that we've gathered because of differentiation, personalization. We've got a lot of intel thanks to technology, which, by the way, we discussed in education conclaves 20 years ago, but we didn't implement. So, you know what? I'm very pro technology because it's given us as educators insight about children that we didn't have. Anil?
All of us are. In fact, the other way of saying it is that we don't have a choice. And we need to understand, learn,
I'm not using it as we don't have a choice. this was always a choice. We didn't exercise it. So I have a different
now we
opinion.
don't have.
Very well said, Dr. Jayashree. And thank you for highlighting the role of the teachers. I think it also brings to mind the same anecdote about a child sinking somewhere and a man rushing and swimming and saving the child. And finally, when he comes out, he asks, who pushed me into the water? I think all of us also, to an extent, have been like that. Teachers have just taken it head on and, they've
Yes,
really
yes.
upskilled during the pandemic and tried to help children. Very well.
Absolutely. And once again, a huge round of
Thank you.
applause for all
Yes,
of our incredible
you're speaking
teachers.
about
Thank you.
you're speaking about backbenchers. I think they are the best problem solvers. I think during this pandemic, we have found they are the ones who are helping teachers in upskilling in technology.
I agree with you.
Very
Thank
true,
you.
sir. Very
Thank
I would
you,
like to
Dr.
take that
Nicholas.
as a compliment, sir.
That's
Thank you
right,
so
that's
much.
So I was a backbencher as well.
Well, great.
Okay.
That
Thank
just
you,
makes me
Dr.
feel so
Nicholas.
much
Thank
better.
you. Brilliant point.
Absolutely. My next question goes to Mrs. Susmita Mohanty. Ma'am, I request you to suggest some best practices to implement hybrid learning in schools. Students can enjoy in-class interactions, learn as expected, and stay safe, of course, in the current situation.
It was really a wonderful session. I thank Tata classes for this webinar where we could meet educators from different fields and brainstorming on the most progressive as well as the focus topic of today, that is hybrid learning. So if you ask me that, the different practices in hybrid learning, what's going on, because from my own experiences, I feel that initially when the first lockdown happened, as everybody has mentioned, we all were pushed into from offline to online without knowing how to deal with it. It was very challenging, very complicated. But then every day, at the end of the day, there used to be discussion that what went right and what went wrong and how do we improvise for next day. And this daily discussion and innovation, till that time, we never used to sit together and think that we have to find out solution for every day's problem. So we started thinking that this is the problem happening. So let us think together, put our brains together and find out some solution for this problem. So every day there used to be new innovation. Every day there used to be new problem solving, and we were emerging as better online class teachers, subject teachers or the school teachers during the time of this pandemic. But then when the second lockdown happened, so we found out that we were so well versed, because every day we were planning that what new thing we are going to do. From academics, we moved to sports because it was necessary for physical exercise for the children. We saw to it that all the children are doing exercise. We introduced yoga for the parents because parents were all the time at home and then sitting besides the children. They were also becoming somehow, losing patience, getting irritated, and their behavioral issues where their relationship between children and the parents were not that cordial. So understanding that, we started even providing them yoga so that there is a very harmonious environment could be created at home. And then we started improvising that how about having inter-house competitions online. So we started having different kind of inter-house competitions, as Jayashree ma'am said, that the students, they started taking the leadership of organizing classes in flipped classrooms. So what we did, we organized a month for students, and students had to have the Zoom meeting, giving responsibility, conducting different sessions, inviting schools, quiz was happening, dance competition was happening. All these things were happening, and slowly we started finding out that we are running smoothly and seamlessly the online classes. But now when it came to the hybrid learning, we found out that the children, those they were, as our school is located a little bit far away from the city, So then transportation, it takes time. So there are students in grade 10th, grade 9th, and in 12th. So they are able to manage their time well. They are able to attend the classes, plus their free time is there for self-study. So they say that this mode of, whenever they have doubts, they would make all those doubts put together and come to school and clarify their doubts and go. So this is very, very beneficial. And then there were a lot of professional development which started for the teachers. It's about professional training given from the CBSE, from international curriculum, because there is master classes happening from Canada, happening from Australia, happening from all around the world. And we are sitting at place, we are getting ourselves enriched with variety of knowledge, use of technology. Technology helped to get the learning from the best physics teacher of the world, to get the knowledge of best chemistry teacher of the world, and having variety of simulation, virtual lab and experiments and all those things, which was really enjoyed by the students. We organized science exhibition. We got the judges from, one judge from Canada, one judge from America, and they were there to interact with students and to judge the projects of the students. What could be more, beneficial than this, having directly scientist interaction with the kids and question answer session with them. So it was a great learning for the students through this hybrid mode of learning, and the journey is still on, because we also realize in due course of time that we need to have consideration about the mental health of the students. So we started bringing professional counselors and having counseling for the children, counseling for parents, which went on regularly. After the school hours also, there was specifically the children, those they were identified, for them the counselor started doing counseling after the school hours. So whatever observation we had from different angle, similarly how to conduct assessment now, because during the assessment we found out that there are shortcomings. So then we tried different kind of methods, platforms. Then we tried with the this exam.net. And then after trying that, we found out that it was a little bit difficult for the teachers to get adopted, but then slowly teachers also got adopted. Then the assessment also seamlessly were conducted, which was biggest challenge. So this innovation, experimentation, exploration, these became the daily routine, which had never happened in the traditional classroom earlier. So traditional classroom have their own importance and their own merits and demerits. And this pedagogical improvement, what is done, the evolving of the pedagogy, time to time as per the requirement, it was not there earlier. We had a set system that you have to continue with that. But when we moved to online, then we developed our own pedagogy depending on the requirement. And this was much more interesting and beneficial for the students. And there was a great learning happened from the students through this new new methods and all. Sometimes students have so many new ideas and thoughts, as Dr. Jayashree was telling. They started, helping, guiding the teachers, those they're interested to learn. So we became partner in the process of learning, co-learner. And this co-learner is also, the ego which was there earlier, that how can a teacher learn from a student? Yeah. So it became, partner learning from each other, respecting each other. That was a great change which happened during the time of this, now at present, this hybrid learning system. Then there are variety of other, like Jayashree ma'am mentioned that quizzes were there, graphics were there, animation was there. So these are the different things which are, simulation is there. So teachers kept on trying new methods, because they wanted that the children, they have a short span of concentration and they get bored easily. So
Ma'am,
teachers
sorry
contact.
to
Yes,
sorry
yes,
to
yes.
interrupt,
Yes.
but this was always there. We just
Yeah.
never exercised it as teachers.
Very true. Very true. Very
So,
true.
you know, I'm just going to say that we waited for a pandemic to tell us that
Yeah.
gamification is a learning. So,
Yeah.
sorry, ma'am, but very progressive schools had been doing it way before. And you and
It
I
was,
have been
see,
in conferences.
Fatima ma'am, it was, we had the e-content which was available in the smart board.
Yeah, so
facility,
when
all
people tell
those
me
things.
Padlet and all of that, I was like, we used this 10 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, what is it that's new? What have you done?
No, I think it's
Yeah.
the transition
Yeah, Nipa.
is
Thank you.
jarring for for the overall
Technology.
population.
Yeah.
For the overall population, for people who didn't have access to that, it was a little jarring in the beginning. I got to know about Zoom just in 2020. So things like that,
Same with us
it has
also.
been inaccessible to most. And even it is in need of the hour to understand that technology is here
Correct.
to help. It is here, it is an integral part of our lives. It's not going anywhere, and we have to make the best use of it. Right? If
This
I
is
may say
right.
so.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Very, very true.
Well, thank you so much for your valuable suggestions, Mrs. Mohanty. I'm sure schools and students will definitely benefit from them. And Mr. Mammen, as an EdTech leader, I invite your take on how can technology improve teaching learning outcomes in a hybrid learning scenario?
Well, Nipa, I just have to repeat what you said, that technology is here to stay and it's up to us to make the best use of it, right? And it's truly been an enlightening session and so many different insights. Fatema ma'am actually covered, she made my work much easier. She talked a lot about independent learning, the importance of being methodical, disciplined, getting the right amount of sleep, and so on. And Dr. Correa talked about this shift from this rote memory-based learning to competency-based learning. Which makes it more challenging for the students, but that's the right amount of challenge that we need to give them, and there's a way to go about doing that. And Deepti, also touched on a very important aspect of a society, which is the digital divide. I think that's something that we need to pay more attention to, because of course on one side you have students with access to lots of the most advanced technologies, and on the other people who don't have even access to devices. So that's a critical aspect that everyone is obliged to look at. Jayashree ma'am talked about the fact that if you have to create engagement in the classroom, you need adequate planning, right? And that's something that we miss. We don't, you cannot come to the classroom and think that you can create engagement there. You need the right planning there. And of course, Susmita ma'am talked about important things like gamification, the importance of to be physically fit. Things like yoga and classroom, and also even cultural competitions. They're all things that we've forgotten to a great extent during the lockdown, right? And it's refreshing to hear that all these things have been tried and experimented in different schools. So that's great. So I'll just end this, and wrap up this session, and of course we'll go on to talk more about Tata Study probably. But just wanted to say that the most important thing is that one thing that we need to pay attention to in education is that we need to make it more evidence-based. Education is today more of a science than an art. Of course, you're not taking away from the art. Of course, teaching will continue to be an art, but there's also science to learn, right? And how do we determine that? We look at evidences. We look at, like, for example, the same way you do randomized trials in medical sciences, you do today randomized trials even in learning settings, like looking at different scenarios. You do a certain intervention in group A, you do intervention B in group C, and intervention D in another group, and see which intervention works, provided all the groups come from similar context, right? And then you can change things around. So these are all empirical evidences that we're collecting in terms of learning. And so there are many things that we've come to figure out. For example, we know that if students have to learn, if you have to push the onus of learning back to students, the most important aspect of that is that they need to plan for it. So, for example, if I have an exam coming up, let's say 2 months from now, and I have 3 chapters of science, 2 chapters in English, and maybe 4 chapters from social sciences, I need to have a proper plan in place to ensure that I meet my deadlines before the exam, right? So planning is a critical aspect, and without planning, you won't be able to master your learning. That's number one. Second, obviously, is that most times what students forget is that I'm talking of different, regardless of which medium that we use, okay, whether it's be it technology or offline. But always, and of course, the consensus is that we have to use the blend of both mediums, right? So you need to get the big picture. So if you're learning, let's say photosynthesis, for example, before getting into the technical definitions of photosynthesis, what is the big idea in photosynthesis? It's about making food. So you can start with the metaphor of making food at home, for example, and connect it to that and say it's about plants making food with the help of sunlight, for example. And then, you get into the details. I mean, otherwise, for a class 5 student, it's all just too many words. Then the second thing is methodical, everyone talks about it. I mean, you need to be disciplined and methodical. So you have to revise consistently. It's not like you revise something today and then you forget about it later. You have to keep it. And revision doesn't mean just reading or viewing videos. Of course, these are important. You need to read your chapters, but you need to also probably look up videos that relate to it. But viewing something once, you may think that you mastered it, but that's not enough. You have to practice. So you have to practice what you learn, and it's not enough that you just practice one, because you see a video or you read a chapter, you attempt your practice session, you may get 10 out of 10. You do the same practice, let's say 3 days later, you get 7 out of 10. You do the same practice, let's say 2 weeks later, you get maybe 5 out of 10. So it's important that you need to space your practice, and that's a critical aspect of what we refer to as the science of learning. This is called spaced repetition or spaced practice. So you have to practice consistently over time to ensure that these things stay in your head. And retention is a critical aspect of learning. I mean, of course, there are also lots of creative things that you need to do as part of learning, but you cannot take away the importance of retention, and that happens with spacing. Another one is about testing yourself. So you have to test yourself constantly, okay? And instead of being tested by someone else. And then you have to monitor your own progress, not in relation to others. Don't be competitive with others. Be competitive with yourself. That way, you're not demotivated. So for example, what happens in competitions is that in a competition with multiple students, for example, is that the top students always feel charged when they compete with others, right? Because, they come ahead in the competition. But imagine that for the average learner, competing with others may be okay, but, when you see the grades, you tend to think of yourself as an average student, and that doesn't work too much on your confidence. So if those students, for example, manage to compete with themselves, keep raising the bar every time, for example, you'll see a great change in them. So that these are some of the aspects of learning how to learn. So just wanted to end on that note. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the really pearls of wisdom. And over to you, Nipa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mammen, for your insights and summarizing the entire panel. Technology has definitely been a savior in the current scenario. And so now I would like to open for the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions that we've received from our guests, and I'm going to just throw it to my panel and have any one of you answer them. So my first question is how Tata Study is different from other online courses is nowadays too many institutions are providing online study, and every second day a new player is coming in the market.
Tata Study is different mainly from the points that I just talked about now, because Tata Study has been designed based on the science of learning. Okay, it's not just about learning the content, because learning the content is only one aspect of it. You need to learn how to learn. As I said, talked about the whole importance of planning, big ideas, revision, spaced practice. These are things that, I don't think many others are talking about. And these are based on solid empirical evidence. So that's where Tata Study is critically different. Of course, and the most important thing being planning. And Tata Study, in fact, helps students to set a goal, and the app in itself will help them, nudge them to be consistent and methodical and reach their goal.
Been in this industry for 2 decades. I have to say there's something associated with the Tata brand. One, it associates itself with quality, and maybe my husband was part of the group. I value when Anil spoke about research. So there's backed data to what we're putting out for the kids. For me, that is a huge plus as an educator, because I hate stuff being put out which is not time tested, which does not have research. And I know in India, we do a lot of that.
Why Tata Edge? Because they keep updating and adding on to the content. That is very, very important.
Evolution.
And they also customize it. So
Yeah.
it is very important that, at some schools where something is required, they customize
Absolutely.
the whole thing. And whenever there is a need, they keep on updating the content.
But it's
That's
also
something very good.
It's also driven by data points, right? I'm in Mumbai, I'm in a metro, but I might have a school in Ratnagiri, two different parts of Maharashtra. But I love the data points, and I think that is the strength.
Absolutely. Getting a stamp of approval from two renowned academics. Thank you so much. We move on now to our next question. Students lost concentration and memory power. Kindly suggest solutions. Anybody from the panel?
Yeah, I would like to take this.
Yes, ma'am.
Students are losing concentration because they're spending a lot of time on online learning, and then some of them into a lot of games and things like that, video games and things like that. So for that, the best way is that they need to have regular practice of mindfulness. So if every teacher going to class, before starting the class, if they can put in some soothing music and make them to listen to some positive sound or vibes, so that is definitely going to help them to develop their concentration and calm down their mind. So once their mind is calm, then definitely their focus would increase. So it is necessary that mindfulness need to be introduced for the students as well as for the teachers. Teachers also need to have mindfulness. So then they can have a better classroom, having an effective classroom and productive classroom. So this need to be practiced by both of them to increase the concentration.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Susmita ma'am. A little bit of meditation and yoga definitely will help. Right, very true.
Mindfulness and creating a Zen environment perhaps is what is important and required for that. All right, then.
Nipa, I have to add in.
Yes, ma'am.
You're not going to get attentive children in the classroom unless they're physically active. Okay, these kids are waking up just before they're logging in. Okay, that whole virtual environment has to be replaced. We're gonna have to get the kids up. They're gonna have to exercise. They're gonna have to eat a healthy breakfast, and they're gonna have to shower before they can actually log on. If at all they're still in log on, or even in the physical world, they're struggling. Sorry, input. I'm a sportsman's wife. You can't meditation, all that's fine. You have to sleep. You have to eat healthy. And you have to exercise. Sorry, those are non-negotiables. And I don't think parents understand that.
Yeah, here one more thing also is important. The teacher also should be having, a lot of plan to keep the class very engaging. So that's, every day there should be interesting planning to be done by the teacher means the teacher knows the requirement of the children. So accordingly, the planning should be done so that the moment the teacher enters to the class, then there is a lot of excitement, alertness, active learning, and engaging learning should be happening for the students.
Add one important Nipa?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Other than this, I think all nice points are good points are given. One more thing is digital detox, which is very important because children are continuously on the devices. So they also need to remain away or some absenteeism from digital devices. Maybe before going to bed, maybe early, maybe weekends, we need to, as teachers, tell the children, weekends at least remain away for 5 hours from the devices. Maybe difficult, but somewhere maybe type of fasting in Maharashtra or in Indian culture, we'll learn how to fast to keep our body fit. Same way, digital fasting also is important to keep our mind strong and to improve the concentration.
Very true. I think it all comes back to having a disciplined lifestyle that will help children, focus better and have, better concentration. So now I will move on to my next question. With learning outcomes being affected due to online teaching, learning and reduction of syllabus, will our students be prepared for higher education? Now, this is a concern that many parents are having. So if anybody would like to take that.
When it comes to higher education, whether today everything is what is there is available. If you just Google it, you will be getting the term digital offloading or Google effect. Everything is there today. Our mind actually need not remember everything. Today, artificial intelligence is being used in each and everything. Only children must know where it is accessed and where it is available, as Anil sir rightly said. But definitely when we take studies as science and use those methodology, it becomes easy. But certain concepts are not learned. Those concepts are available. It is not like before where children had to go to school, learn all these concepts. Today, you have got all this nano learning. With a click of button, within 1 minute, you learn certain concepts and you come to know about that. Maybe the nano learning videos may not give you all the information, but there are other videos. You have got a lot of information available online. So as if I say, maybe from my point of view, it should not affect higher learning, but definitely for those children, those who want to do a systematic study, maybe get into research or want to become professors or to get in universities, they may have to work a little more because they need to find that linear connection, because what you get online may not be linear. You get everything together from the pool you need to pick up. So I think it should not affect.
I'd like to add in here, see, unless and until the teachers know the learning objectives, the learning outcomes would be very difficult to achieve. Information is abundantly available, but that information has to convert into intelligence, into knowledge. Just covering the syllabus is not important. It is more important that you uncover the syllabus, right? We are all in the process of covering the syllabus, completing the syllabus. But if the teachers start uncovering the syllabus, the learning outcomes would be achieved. And when the learning outcomes would be achieved, there is going to be, no gap in learning. So we need to bridge that learning gap which is happening by whatever means we can. And then the children will face no difficulty whatsoever. So learning objective first and learning outcomes, uncovering the syllabus and bridging the gap of learning which has happened due to these online classes. That's what needs to be done.
And Jayashree, even this hybrid class and virtual classes are helping children to become self-learner. They are finding out their comfortable time, they're watching videos, they're doing online studies, they're getting videos of different, those they're writing JEE exam, NEET exam. They're, in spite of having their regular teacher, they're watching the videos of different other people and understanding.
Exactly, ma'am. They are moving at their own pace in their own space.
Yeah.
They're moving in their own pace, in their own space. Yes.
Yeah. They're becoming self-learner now.
Yes,
Yes, definitely becoming self-learners. And I think I would also agree with Dr. Nicholas, coming back to the question, whether cutting down of the curriculum is going to affect our higher studies and if children can achieve it. I think this is a question that is very, very open-ended right now with the way we are placed. Definitely, as everyone has given in so many valuable insights, we'll have to wait and watch. But definitely, like Dr. Nicholas just said, that there is information present on the net. So that's not something we have to worry about anymore. But as time passes, I'm sure it will be clear how children can achieve this. As far as learning outcomes and objectives are concerned, I think at least with the CBSE schools as well as the IB board schools, all this is already outlined by the boards. And now I think more than ever, teachers and students are pretty much aware of it. So let us wait and watch, and I'm sure there will be clarity. with time as it passes.
All right. Ms. Agarkar, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm just going to say that, a lot of them have spoken about information, which is being transferred. And then someone spoke about knowledge. Okay. Basically, for me, input, output. I'm an MBA student. For me, it's very simple. Unfortunately, sorry, I'm going to say this, Dr. Jayashree, a lot of the schools don't do this. It's about optimization of exam results, which is what CBSE is asking, which is what ICSE is asking. And sorry, you mentioned IB. IB is eventually 11th and 12th because the middle years is not so popular in this country.
Yes, I understand.
So let's not get fixated. This is a country that loves performance. If we are talking about learning, and that's what Tata is about, let's talk about process of learning, acquiring information that can help us and help the students build more. Whatever we've spoken right now cannot happen in isolation. It won't happen without parent. Sorry to say, but 1857. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Come on, everyone, all your educators.
The revolt of
1857.
Really. Industrial Revolution?
Industrial Revolution in 18th century.
Same era.
1857 for Indians, I think 1857 is the revolt that is closest to our hearts.
But that's my problem. I think we need to move beyond.
Yeah.
Right? We need to move beyond. So knowledge today, as Anil sir said, is beyond information. It's about learning. It's about understanding. So that's my, so sorry, I had to jump in and say.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to broaden our horizons and think a little out of the box instead of just keeping it framed. My next question is how to bring self-management skills among students towards learning.
Okay, I think a lot of that has already been covered by Fatema ma'am, Susmita ma'am. Firstly, self-management skills, there would be, like first let us, now we know there's an onslaught of digital, there is a digital onslaught and which is here to stay. So firstly, there has to be digital detox sometimes. We have to focus on physical fitness of children so they can be in a position to read and manage their studies themselves. And I think also a little bit of parental supervision could help. And these are the only things that come to my mind in the given scenario. Probably.
Can I add 1 or 2 points?
Yes.
Today this pandemic itself is the best way of learning, managing the skills. Children were in one way of managing the things, maybe managed by the parents, the teachers. Now during this pandemic, children have learned how to manage their studies. They are even maybe when it comes to academics, they have learned how to apply for various courses, short-term courses like coding, digital literacy, gamification, financial literacy. They're all on their own. They're all attending those free courses and they're also finding a lot of other information, so managing their skills. And when it comes to home, they are also, most of the times they were in the school or in the coaching classes. And during this pandemic, they have been watching their mother. Mother is the best example of managing, self-management. And they are observing the mother, how mother is doing this work, whether they are helping the mother or not helping, that is secondary, but they're observing. That observation itself is learning. And to be ready for this class, they have to keep their online schooling, the place ready. It's need to be kept, all the areas need to be kept ready. laptop need to be kept ready, or the device, whatever they have, everything need to be managed. There are a lot of self-learning skills they have learned during this period. And the other thing is they have to learn how to manage with the sound. There are a lot of things happening during this time. Maybe mother is making some sound in the kitchen. Maybe someone else is ringing the bell. So children have learned to manage, to concentrate despite all these sounds, despite all this disturbance. In the same way, there are a lot of other skills children have learned how to manage on their own. Maybe there would be a lot of other skills, maybe other panelists might be able to throw light on. That's from my side.
Yeah, I'd like to add in here, parents and teachers are partners in education, we say, right? So if parents and teachers both take care of two things, one is monitoring and the other is modeling. So if the parents and teachers become role models, and if we do a little bit of monitoring of the children, I'm sure the children are going to pick up all good habits and all self-management tricks from the teachers and from the parents. So it is imperative in these days to become role models. If you don't want your children to do certain things, first you have to quit doing them. So I'm sure, this will definitely help in acquiring more of self-management skills.
Absolutely. Ms. Mohanty, would you like to add anything?
I would support Jayashree because I feel that the parents monitoring is very, very important. If parents have a set routine, because most of the time it happens that nowadays children, they direct everything at home and parents have to follow. If parents still remain firm and then keep monitoring what the child is doing, what studies the child doing, whether there is a routine for sitting and studying after the child finishes the school. So if these small things are monitored, and at the same time, as Jayashree said, teachers, they keep monitoring, and there is a regular communication between parent and the teacher. So then I think the best of the result or the best of the outcome will come, because the goal would be same, and both the side, the action would be taken.
Absolutely. Yes, Ms. Agarkar.
I also think, I think the communication channels need to change. Parents need to start talking to their children as individuals, as people that are going to be accountable for an action. For the longest pre-pandemic, we were micromanaging as parents. Ye homework tha, ye exam tha, ye. Let the kids take responsibility. So your opening question to me was, how do they take it? My answer is, parents need to take a step back and have a conversation, not a direction. Technology will boost. I think Tata has a lot of those apps. You have to have essential agreements. Input, output, again, I spoke about it. But honest conversations. I used to stand, I still stand. I'm 47 years old. I still stand when my father enters the room. I don't think my son will. Times have changed. We need to change with that, but we also need to make sure that they respect us. So the conversations have to be changed. Are parents doing enough of it? Nipa, that's my concern. And I think parental orientation is going to be critical, something that Tatas can take that forward.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we come to the end of the Q&A session. This was indeed such a fruitful discussion about learning in the new normal. I'm sure that students can use some of the tips shared by our panelists to improve their learning and, of course, their performance. I would like to thank all of my esteemed panelists and speakers for giving us your valuable time and sharing some great insights and thoughts which significantly impact learning and education. Also, my deepest gratitude and thanks to our audience for participating today and asking insightful questions to make the discussions more meaningful. I truly, truly appreciate all of your presence here today. I wish all the children the best in their studies and upcoming exams. You can also take a closer look at the product mentioned by Mr. Mammen by logging on to www.tatastudy.com. There is a free 15-day trial period. The app is available on the web, iOS, and Play Store. Tata Study is currently available for CBSE grades 1 to 10. So please explore it. With that, it is time for me to bid all of you farewell. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much to our guests once again for joining us.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. All the best to everybody. Have a nice day. And let's actually be working on how we can make things better for children.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity.